Joran Sol was among the many young, optimistic people to be inspired by the Rebel Alliance's victory in destroying the first Death Star to join the galactic-wide rebellion. But unlike many of his peers, Joran was not a fighter, but rather a simple mathematician who used his skills to fight tyranny on the technical side. Unknown to the naive youth, he would come to play a role in nearly bringing down the very rebellion he sought to help. It was during one of the early skirmishes of the Galactic Civil War when a rebel strike team was sent to the war-torn planet of Jabeam in an attempt to rally the people to join their cause. This mission ended up being a complete failure, as not only did the government of Jabeam refuse to aid the Rebel Alliance, but their entire population was ultimately enslaved by the Empire as they were viewed as an enemy state due to their rebel contacts. During this failed mission, Joran was caught by the Empire and personally interrogated by Darth Vader, who was able to acquire the hyperspace mathematics used by the rebels, making him one step closer to finding their continually moving fleet. Following the interrogation, the nearly broken Joran was then sent to an Imperial prison camp, along with all the enslaved Jabeam people. While there, he was brought under the hands of the Imperial intelligence, who continued his torture for more intel. Both physical and mental pain were applied to the young man, with even his own memories being twisted to be used against him. In one case, the memories of his own parents were twisted in such a manner that it appeared both Palpatine and Vader were his parents, and they warmly encouraged him to submit to the Empire's will. At the end of it all, he was fully broken and became a sleeper agent for the Empire. When the rebels finally attacked the Imperial prison, the Imperial intelligence officers let them capture Joran, in hopes of having him be brought back to their fleet. And they did just that, bringing Joran back to the heart of their main fleet and later treating him in a bacta tank. During this treatment process, a nearly wasted rebel officer named Dina Shan was tasked in looking after the patient, despite having just finished one of her drinking binges. When she arrived to the bacta center within the rebel ship, it took her some time to realize that something was wrong due to her intoxication. But as she began to sober up, she realized that one of the bacta tanks had been shattered. As she explored the facility more, she was stalked by a bloodthirsty Joran from the shadows. When the time was right, Joran attacked Dina and began to strangle her with a wire. Although he was nearly successful in killing her, Dina calling him by his name snapped him out of his programming for a split second, allowing her to escape his grasp. Despite being out of it for a moment, Joran fell back into his programming and proceeded to kill her again, this time forcing her to the ground in an attempt to choke her out with his hands. But once again, he was able to fight his programming enough to prevent his murder, stopping at the last second and letting Dina go, with him then confessing what the Empire had wanted him to do. He then broke down crying after realizing what he had tried to do. Following that, Joran was put in the detention center and was later interrogated by the rebels. Despite his attempt of killing one of their own, they saw his clear conviction of regret over his actions and believed he was on his way to being fully free from his programming. As a result, he was free to move around the main rebel ship as long as he had a watcher. Around this same time, the Rebel High Command received intel that an Imperial officer named Janek Sunbur, nicknamed Tank, wanted to defect to them. Although they refused to accept his offer, fearing the risk outweighed the rewards, Luke decided to go rogue and retrieve this officer as he was one of his childhood friends from Tatooine. Luke was accompanied by Dina on his off-the-books mission, with him eventually succeeding in retrieving Tank. Unknown to them, however, Tank was an Imperial spy who was part of Vader's plan in locating the Rebel fleet. Despite this, he was able to trick the rebels into believing his story of defection, with them giving him limited privileges to roam the Rebel ship. Luke and Dina, on the other hand, were rebuked for refusing to follow the orders of the High Command. As time passed, Joran was believed to have fully been freed from his programming, allowing him to roam as he pleased. This, of course, was a huge mistake for the rebels. During a High Command meeting at the ship's bridge, Joran casually walked up as if nothing was wrong. Despite being greeted with joy by the others for his full recovery, Joran instinctively opened fire on everyone in the room, murdering numerous rebel leaders and nearly killing Leia. Luke was quick on his feet, disarming Joran, but it was all too late as the sleeper agent had given away their location to the Empire and had disabled the rebel fleet's hyperspace navigational computers. As this chaos was erupting, Tank made his move as well, taking Luke hostage at blaster point. Both shocked at this betrayal and desiring to treat Leia, Luke was at his former friend's complete mercy. Despite his begging to be let go, Tank refused and forced Luke to carry Leia on his back while they moved to a shuttle to be taken to Vader. All the while this was happening, the Rebel fleet was being completely devastated by Imperial Star Destroyers. As the internal structure of the ship they were in started to fall apart, Luke made his move and attacked Tank. They got into a bloody fight, with Tank coming out on top. Knowing he lost, Luke did not beg for his life, but rather Leia's, promising Tank that he would come with him to Vader as long as he saved Leia. This moved Tank enough for him to do just that, save Leia before she could plummet to her death following another explosion in the ship. When given the chance to save himself or her, Tank chose Leia, handing her arm to Luke and allowing himself to fall to the fiery pit below. Across the same ship, Joran was still desperately fighting his programming, with all the bodies of his former allies around him. Joran was drowning in guilt over what he had done in his weakness in not being able to fight what the Empire had done to him. During his internal struggle, he was starting to get burned up from the nearby debris. Nonetheless, he continued to fight through it to the point of re-enabling the fleet's hyperspace navigational computers. When he was successful in doing this and had the fleet jump safely into hyperspace, Joran was fully consumed by the flames and ceased to exist. His noble sacrifice was later discovered by the rebels following a recording, and it was clear to them just how dangerous it was to be captured by the Empire. Additionally, Joran's actions had the main rebel fleet nearly destroyed, with them desperately scattering as a result and becoming dependent on forming another planetary base in order to recover.